Stop wasting your time manually downloading attachments from Outlook and uploading them to SharePoint. Automate that shit. Power Automate doesn't have a download attachment from Outlook action. We'll need to use the Get Attachment v2 action in combination with the Create File action to get our email attachments onto SharePoint. In an upcoming video, I'll show you how you can use a SharePoint list to dynamically change the folder the attachments are created in. Instead of managing multiple flows, you'll only need to manage one. Subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. In Power Automate, create an automated cloud flow. Give your flow a name and select the appropriate When a New Email Arrives trigger. I'll be using the When a New Email Arrives in a Shared Mailbox v2 trigger. Insert the original mailbox address. Next, add a compose action to store the message ID. Save the flow and run a test. Compose an email with a few attachments and send it. Instead of annoying anyone that may have access to the shared mailbox, I'm going to use a manual trigger with a Get Email v2 action. I also find that it saves time while building flows if I can manually trigger a flow while building and testing instead of having to wait for an email to arrive. The Get an Email v2 action requires the message ID, which is why I needed to run a test on an email. This part is optional. If you'd like to keep the automated trigger, you can feel free to move on to the next section using the timestamp in the description box. I'm going to copy the message ID outputs to my clipboard. I'll delete these actions and add a manual flow trigger and a Get Email v2 action. In the message ID, I'll paste the ID from my clipboard. I'll insert the shared mailbox address here. I'll change the Include Attachments dropdown to Yes. Run a test. On my SharePoint site, I have a document library where the attachments will be created. In Power Automate, add and apply to each action. Insert the attachment's dynamic content from the Get Email v2 action above. This action will loop through each attachment from the email. Add a Get Attachment v2 action. Insert the message ID dynamic content from the Get Email v2 action. In the Attachment ID field, insert the attachment's attachment ID dynamic content. Since my mailbox is a shared mailbox, I need to insert the email address here. I'd like to file these attachments in a dated folder. Add a compose action to store the folder name. Remember to rename your actions to keep things organized. This compose action is optional. However, I find that the cursor can sometimes jump around in the folder path field of the next action we'll be adding, making it difficult to type. First, add a /. Next, because I want to use a date, I'll insert an expression. Use the format datetime function. Insert the UTC now function. Add a comma and single quotes. I'll use this date format. For my folder, I'd like to include email attachments in the folder name. Add a Create File action. Select the site address. For the folder path, select the document library. Insert the outputs from the compose action above. In the file name field, select the name dynamic content from the Get Attachment v2 action. In the file content field, select the content bytes dynamic content from the Get Attachment v2 action. Run a test. The folder has been created, and all the attachments have been created as well. It's important to note that if you are creating an attachment with a name that already exists, the create file action will overwrite your original file. Initialize a string variable in the root of the flow. We'll use this variable to store the file name. If the file already exists with the same name, we'll append a timestamp to the file name. You can customize this to suit your needs. Add a Get Files Properties Only action right above the Create File action. Select your site address and library name. Click on Show Advanced Options. We'll use a filter query to check and see if there is already a file with the same name in the selected document library. Type file leaf ref. EQ for equals to, and insert single quotes. In between the single quotes, insert the name dynamic content from the Get Attachment action. Next, add a compose action to store the number of files returned. This compose action is optional. However, I like to use compose actions to help with troubleshooting, especially when it comes to conditions in my flow. Insert an expression. We'll use the length function. Insert the value outputs from the action above. Add a condition action. In the first value field, insert the outputs from the compose action above. Leave the operator as is equal to and enter 0. If the number of items returned is equal to 0, this means a file with the same name does not exist. In the yes branch, we'll set the variable to the attachment name. We'll set the variable with the name dynamic content from the Get Attachment v2 action. If the number of items returned is not equal to 0, this means a file with the same name already exists. Because the name dynamic content will return the attachment name along with the file extension, we'll need to get the file extension first. These compose actions aren't necessary. A single expression can be written to accomplish the same result. However, to make it easier to understand, I'll be using compose actions. We'll use the first compose action to return the name of the attachment without the file extension. Insert an expression. We'll use the split function. Insert the name dynamic content from the Get Attachment v2 action. Add a comma and single quotes. Between the single quotes, enter a period. This expression will split the file name at the period, essentially returning an array of values. The text before the period will be the first value. The text after the period will be the last value. Wrap the entire expression in the first function. Place your cursor at the start of the expression by pressing the up arrow key. Type in first with an opening bracket. Next, place your cursor at the end of the expression by pressing the down arrow key and insert a closing bracket. Press OK. This expression will return the file name only. Add another compose action. I'll click on the expression label of the previous compose action and copy the entire expression to my clipboard. I'll paste the expression and change first to last. This expression will return the file extension only. Add a set variable action. Insert the outputs from the compose action with the file name only. You can customize the syntax of your file name to suit your needs. I'll insert an underscore and a timestamp. I'll create an expression using the UTC-now function. I'll wrap it in a format date time function. Add a comma and single quotes. I'll format the date and time using this format. This format will return the year, 2-digit month and date, as well as the hours and minutes, all in a single string of text. Add a period and insert the outputs from the compose action that has the file extension. In the create file action, delete the name dynamic content and replace it with the file name variable. Run a test. The new attachment files were created with a timestamp in the file name. After you've confirmed the flow works, you can remove the manual trigger and replace it with the appropriate when a new email arrives trigger. First, I'll delete the manual trigger. Because I'm using a shared mailbox, I will need to use the when a new email arrives in a shared mailbox trigger. Adjust this trigger to suit your needs. If you'd like to only have this flow run when emails with attachments are received from a specific sender, add the email addresses into the from field. Separate each email address with a semicolon. At the end of this video, I'll cover how to use the trigger conditions to prevent your flow from running if certain conditions aren't met. This can be helpful if you receive a variety of emails in your shared mailbox but only want to trigger the flow if an email is sent from specific senders. If you'd like to skip ahead, use a timestamp in the description box below and check out the Helpful Insights section of this tutorial. Change these two dropdowns to yes. If you'd like to filter out emails that include specific text in the subject line, enter that text here. Delete the Get Email v2 action and insert the attachment's dynamic content from the trigger into the Apply to Each action. In the Get Attachment v2 action, select the Message ID dynamic content. Let's run a test. I'll send a test email to the shared mailbox. In SharePoint, the attachments have been created. Depending on when you'll be running your flow, you may want to consider adding a Convert Time Zone action to your flow after the Get Attachment v2 action. The Convert Time Zone action will convert the UTC Now timestamp to your local time zone. In the base time field, insert the UTC Now function. For the source time zone, search for Coordinated Universal Time. For the destination time zone, search for your local time zone. For the format string, search for Round Trip. In my flow, I'm going to replace any instances where I've used the UTC Now function with the outputs from the Convert Time Zone action. Trigger conditions in Power Automate can be used to check whether certain conditions meet your criteria before the flow is triggered. In my flow, I'm using the When a New Email Arrives in a Shared Mailbox v2 trigger. This mailbox will receive various emails at any given time. However, for this specific flow, I only want to trigger the flow if an email is received from a specific domain. Trigger conditions can be added to most Power Automate triggers. Click on the three dots of your trigger and select Settings. Click on Add to add trigger conditions. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to access any dynamic content from here. I'll click Cancel and add a filter array action to my flow. I'm going to use this filter array action to compose my expression. Leave the From field blank and just use this section of the action. In the first value field, insert the From dynamic content from the flow trigger. Change the operator to Contains, and in the second value field, insert the domain. Click on Edit in Advanced mode and copy this expression to your clipboard. Delete the filter array action. Add a new trigger condition and paste in the expression. Let's run a test. I'll send an email from an internal email account. I'll also send an email from a Gmail account. Here in the flow run, you can see that the flow has only run once in the last few minutes. If you'd like to filter on the subject line, you can compose the condition expression in the same way. I'll add a filter array action again. In the first value field, I'll select the subject dynamic content from the trigger above. Leave the operator as is equal to and insert a subject line into the second value field. It's important to note when adding multiple trigger conditions, all conditions need to be true for the flow to trigger. Click on Edit in Advanced mode and copy the expression to your clipboard. Delete the filter array action and add a new trigger condition, and paste in the expression. Run another test. I'll send 2 emails from Gmail, one with a subject line containing meeting minutes and one without. Here in the flow run, you can see the flow has only run once in the last few minutes. In SharePoint, the only attachment saved was the meeting minutes. What other repetitive tasks are you looking to automate? Let me know in the comments down below. If you plan to create this automation to help you save time in your daily workflow, please consider giving this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any other Power Automate flow ideas. Thanks for watching!